When the Lionesses lifted the European trophy in 2022 and changed women's football forever, I was in the stand crying tears of joy. But I felt like something was missing. Despite South Asians being the largest ethnic minority group in the UK, there is a clear lack of representation in football. And we still haven't seen a woman of South Asian heritage represent England at the senior level. I'm Marva Kreel, a presenter who's been involved in the girls' and women's game since I was a kid. My granddad came over from Kolkata in the 1960s and was always football mad, and so was my dad. But growing up, I didn't see many other South Asian girls play football around me, and I definitely didn't see them on TV. So I was longing for any form of representation, and only found it in the fictional story Bend It Like Beckham. Now I know what you might be thinking. Why does representation even matter? Are we just trying to tick a diversity box? Do South Asian families even want their children playing football? And are South Asian girls even playing football? But football spends billions on every last detail, from the curve of the boot to anti-sweat technology. But what about whole generations of players that might be missing? How can we be sure that we're picking the best talent for our national team if hundreds of thousands of girls aren't even being considered?
Representation is everything. I mean, you can't be what you can't see, right? That's that really good quote, and I really, really believe that.
British South Asian women find themselves as a minority within a minority within a minority.
If we had a meritocracy, maybe we would see more British Asian and black women players. But something in the system isn't there.
And it's decision makers, whether it's at clubs or agencies or organisations, that has to be diverse. Otherwise, we're just going to keep having these same conversations.
The FA have found that South Asians are actually overrepresented when it comes to participation in grassroots football. And while those numbers drop off with the affiliated football leagues for children and men, it is South Asian girls over 16 who are overrepresented when it comes to the affiliated football leagues. That means that South Asian girls over 16 are playing in numbers we have never seen before. So where are they in our England South? I'm ready to get the answers from our community and industry experts and find out why we haven't had our first senior South Asian Lioness. In order to look to the future, we need to look back at why these problems are still occurring, because the history of women in football and South Asians in Britain is a long and complex one. We begin our timeline in 1920. Women's football took off during World War I, where a Dick Kerr ladies' game saw 53,000 fans rush to Goodison Park to watch. But this popularity caught the attention of the FA, and in 1921 they put a ban on women's football, which would last 50 years. Their reasoning? Simply just, the game of football is quite unsuitable for females and ought not to be encouraged. Both world wars also saw millions of people from South Asia fight and die for Britain due to its centuries-long colonial rule over the Indian subcontinent. And after the Second World War, Britain requested for their colonies to come to the UK and help rebuild their country, creating a surge of South Asian immigration during the 1950s onwards. But life was not easy. South Asian immigrants were often promised a chance at a new life, but instead went through declassing, where those who had worked as teachers or in business roles were now only able to get factory jobs in poor parts of the country. Tensions became particularly bad alongside Britain's industrial decline, which saw an increase in violent racism and attacks on the streets. The racist murders of Gurdeep Singh Chaggar, Altib Ali and Parveen Khan led to further protests and violent clashes. It's easy to forget just how bad and traumatic this period was for South Asians in Britain.
How many times we have been attacked by skinheads? How many have been arrested by the police? How many are there?
But for the diaspora, we continue to hear these stories from our elders. But in the 1990s, we started to see some change on both fronts. In women's football, the first ever official FIFA Women's World Cup was held in 1991, and the game started growing again internationally. For South Asians in Britain, the late 1990s marked a breakthrough as British South Asian culture exploded into mainstream pop culture. And in 2000, Permi Juti even became the first British Asian professional women's footballer in the UK. But while South Asian culture was starting to thrive, the 2001 terrorist attacks on the World Trade Center changed everything. An increase of Islamophobia, anti-immigrant rhetoric and racial profiling left many South Asian communities to become more insular. And for women's football, it wasn't until 2010, 89 years after women were banned from playing football in England, that the WSL was formed, creating a new professional pathway for women in the game. And with it, a new wave of British South Asian stars emerged in the football space. But in 2014, the FA themselves admitted their failure towards Asian representation on and off the field. And while the Lionesses' 2022 Euros win saw a major shift in women's football, for all the positivity, things still aren't changing quickly enough. So now, 11 years since that admission from the FA, I want to see how all this history might have manifested. Why haven't we seen a South Asian senior Lioness? As the nation roared for the Lionesses' Euros win, a lost story was uncovered, that of Aman Dange.
Hi, I'm Marva.
Nice to meet you.
I am Aman Dange, and I was a former England and Arsenal and Southampton footballer.
Not a bad title, right? So how did you get into it?
My mum happened to be a beautician, and she randomly had like this shed that we converted on the side of our house, and some woman from Red Star Southampton, which later got affiliated with Southampton Football Club, just came in for some waxing. And then she started a conversation saying that she plays football, and then she was like, well, my daughter plays, but she's not going to be able to play with the boys for very much longer. And then she was like, well, we just started an under-10s team. Delicious.
Thank you.
My first coach was Sue Bucket. Sue Bucket was legacy cap number 1. So when the 50-year ban happened and was lifted, she was in the first official England squad.
Yeah.
So she noticed that I didn't have a parent on the sideline.
Yeah.
Then she was like, can I speak to your parent? She was like, with the right encouragement and training, I think she can play for England.
From what you've seen, what do you think was maybe missing then that meant that we haven't seen a similar story or many similar stories in the frequency we'd maybe hope in that time between you achieving what you did and the incredible players we're seeing now?
It's a really hard one. I was just really lucky to get in when I did and have the pathways that were there. And so representation and things are all linked to opportunities.
Yeah.
So the very first opportunity we had to actually play for England, I did it. And then the first opportunity we had to be pro, Permi Juthi from Fulham did it. And so like all of these things is it's all linked together, right? Like when I was growing up, I never got my laddu. But I guess my story is different, is like if they'd known and it was kept alive, they could have said, well, at 14, Aman was in the England setup. At 15, she played for Arsenal.
Yeah.
At 15, she played for England. At 16, she was making a debut in the FA Cup. And so I think that could have just opened a conversation with parents when they're not necessarily wanting their kid to play, that there is someone else that was doing it.
Everything Aman achieved was incredible, but even she admits that in some ways the timing lined up perfectly. Call it luck. So what about everyone else? Why haven't we seen more like her? Why was she the only South Asian on the pitch? Why was she the exception and not the beginning of a whole new wave? I'm headed straight to the people who are breaking the silence, the experts, the insiders, the ones who have been watching this unfold for years.
I think there are a lot of different reasons why we see that lack of representation of British South Asians, particularly in the elite game. I think unconscious bias within coaching and academy structures, and even through scouts and scouting, I think remains an issue.
I didn't think about it a lot when I was younger until a coach once said to me, "You're fast for a skinny Asian girl." That's when I started to realise, like, even within a sporting world, like, I was being racialised in a way that I didn't think about before.
Is that a common stereotype of South Asians that you've seen still be pervasive in sport?
100%. It's hard because athletics is a very objective sport. Like, if you cross the line in a faster time, you should be selected for teams, really, in theory. With football, I think it's different because you can be so subjective, and I think that is kind of like creates a breeding ground for this problem, because these are issues, especially issues around stereotypes, these issues are cultural issues that have been going on for years, right? I think when I look back and I think about my dad coming over from Pakistan in the 60s or 70s, and you think how little has changed since then, we should be embarrassed by that.
I think the stereotypes that are stacked against South Asian women are super damaging and operate in a way to present South Asian women as, you know, not being as athletic or not being as sporty or not being as capable or being too intelligent or whatever it might be to take on a game like football, when in actual fact these individuals aren't being seen as people. Because it comes back to this point that a lot of South Asian girls are not even getting the opportunity to be scouted and to be brought into these club environments.
What do you think are those key barriers that are stopping that next level from the, tier 3 or from participation into the elite levels of England pathways?
I think there's a lack of support sometimes from governing bodies, from clubs. There can be a lack of cultural understanding around certain times of year. So with Muslim girls potentially around it's Ramadan, they might not be able to play at certain times and need to break fast at certain times. So clubs need to be more accommodating of everyone as a whole. Often there is cost barriers to modest kit, so helping families potentially be able to afford that if the cost is a barrier for them. And just making the sport as inclusive as possible and making sure there is kind of training for all staff at all levels within the sport to kind of call out racism at all levels and make as inclusive a culture as possible.
Your family plays such a massive part in driving you 2-3 hours to training and back. And if your family aren't on board, which was the case for me and which is probably a case for a lot of people, that is just not going to happen, and you're not going to get that lift, there and back. And it's such a, that is such a small part of someone not making it into academy and making it to, when they get to an age of 13, 14, that's probably where we see a drop and a decrease in diversity in the game. So yeah, the accessibility in London isn't great, and it's probably a lot more accessible further out, like up north. But yeah, in London, it's always been, I think, a bit of a struggle.
There's not a problem with participation. Participation stats are very healthy. South Asian boys and girls have always been playing football. A lot of it's unaffiliated football, but then you've got to ask yourself, well, why is it unaffiliated football? Because they've suffered in affiliated football. They've not always had a fair opportunity. There has been racism, there has been discrimination. There have been occasions where brown players have been overlooked.
I think the first thing you have to talk about is the racism that they've experienced. And, even though a lot of the players in my research, when you spoke to them, because they were minority figures, they didn't want to point out the problem in the space that they're in, because that might then alienate them in that space when they're playing called the P word, irrespective of their race and their ethnicity or their religious identity. They talk about how when they were going for club trials, they'll be played out of position or just left on the side. And I even remember going to watch a participant at a trial that she was at, and she was just sort of left there. And I just thought, she's come to do a trial at your club. Shouldn't you be a bit more welcoming, introducing her to people? But she was just left there, just stood on the side on her own. And when you have these experiences, it doesn't make you feel good. It makes you question, should I really be here?
I was sitting with some friends who were turbans, who were bugs, and they started chanting just a town full of town. Went to the stewards, and you can't explain it to somebody who's never experienced, but you just feel I've come here to watch my team do something I'm really passionate about, but then it sort of takes a part of your soul away in a way, because you're thinking, why are they saying this? And even as older people, I mean, we were in my 20s then, it still impacts you. So if people are experiencing that when there's fewer brown faces around them, it's going to put you, I think, it's going to put you off.
I'm that kid that as soon as I step onto the football pitch, everything else, all the noise disappears, and I'm just so hyper focused on that. So I didn't necessarily hear it properly, but this person walked behind the goal and called me the P word.
I think having interviewed so many players and heard stories from so many players, I don't think they're able to call out racism that they are currently experiencing, because they still want to get picked for the team and they don't want to be seen as a troublemaker.
Do you think that fear is happening throughout the levels of football?
Yeah.
That young girls at grassroots level can't even speak out about it, or their parents can't speak up about it?
Yeah, 100%. That is, yeah. And that's really hard, because if you're trying to tackle a problem, and racism is a big part of this issue, the lack of South Asian players, racism is a big part of that. And why would you want to play football if you're going to play and experience some racism?
I remember walking into the changing room and I automatically knew that there was a couple of eyes on me, and it might have been in my head.
Yeah.
And the thing is, it's really hard, because I know you end up gaslighting yourself a little bit. In some moments you go, oh my God, I am different. And I always felt this additional bit of pressure that if I'm the only brown girl here, or the only Asian, or the only Muslim, I have to be significantly better. And I think for me, I've always felt that. I felt it when I started coaching. Again, it could have been through being inexperienced, but even now, like a lot of times, I'm the only female coach on pitch in a lot of places. And I think, and then you add in all the other diversity boxes that you can tick off and stuff. And I'm like, I feel like I've got to try harder. Like I feel like the bar is different for me than it is for your average person. Like I genuinely have felt that.
Then that makes you start thinking is what's happening? Is it institutional? It's a big thing to say, is it institutional racism? But and maybe it is, and people don't want to say it.
And sometimes I feel like when you do speak to people who have power in these spaces, they never talk about racism. I would love them once just to apologise for the historical wrongs. I would love them for once just to say, I'm sorry we treated you like a stereotype.
I've just gotten a real sense of how many possible South Asian Lionesses we've just lost out on. That's just not quantifiable, because women's football just wasn't accessible for so long. Like, training facilities were miles away. You needed constant parental support in order to make it. And it just wasn't even a viable career option. And then you add, experiences of horrific racism on top of that, or even just feeling like you don't belong. And it's like, well, yeah, why would you put yourself through that? Why would you continue to play for what? £200 on a semi-pro contract if you were lucky? I just think we've just failed so many generations. But I hope this next generation are experiencing things differently. So I want to go and hear from them about their journeys and how they and their families are overcoming stereotypes. And there's one area in England that's leading the way for the next generation: the Midlands.
My name's Kira Wright and I play for Derby County Women. I think my dad was the main kind of reason I got into football. He'd obviously play in goal when he was playing back in the day, and I think my brother would play with him in the garden here. He'd be in goal, be me and my brother, just whoever could score past my dad would win basically. Me and my cousins, they were massive into football, so I'd kind of just tag along with them. Not really follow the girls, but kind of follow my male cousins. They'd be like, Kira, can you leave us alone? I'd be like, no, I want to play too. We joined our local team, Burton Albion, and then joined Derby at the age of 10.
Have you had a lot of support from whether it's the clubs or kind of people around you?
Yeah, no, I think I've always been lucky that I've had that support from day one, which I know probably isn't the case for a lot of people in the South Asian community, but that's obviously changing now. I think my parents were very, very supportive of me.
My parents absolutely loved it. Gabby's parents absolutely loved it. And everybody, when they used to go to the Godwara, used to tell that it's my granddaughter playing, score, and everybody else as well. Really? And they were absolutely, I think the generation ethos and thinking has changed, and there are a lot more support, because obviously we're the parents and they are the grandparents. They support whatever we want to support. So yeah, I think times have changed massively.
Nani, do you want to introduce yourself and tell them how you know me?
I know you.
No.
My name is Narendra Kaur. I am
Grandma
or Nani Kira Rai.
Nani, how do you think you supported me playing football, especially when I was little?
She said, Nani, come on, you play with me. You kicked ball.
We did it together, didn't we?
Yeah, we play together, yeah.
But Nani would be in goal.
Loser.
She doesn't let me lose. She doesn't let me lose.
She laughed. She said, when she was small, when I say you loser, she cried. She said, why you say me loser?
You still do it
now. She's happy. She laughed.
That's the reason I want to win all the time.
Hello.
Hey.
How are you?
I'm good, how are you? I'm Simran Jama and West Brom.
Talk me through your footballing journey. How old were you when you decided, going to give this a little bit of a go?
So my parents took us down to like our local football club, Sporting Castle.
Yeah.
And I was there for 5 till 10. And then we played against Aston Villa boys team, and then I got scouted for Aston Villa then. So I was there for about 8 years. And then got into like development football, and like being at a club for 8 years, you kind of like need a change. So I went to Liverpool, and obviously like I support Liverpool, so like it was an easy decision for me.
Yeah.
So I was there for 2 years, loved it there, and then started going into like women's football and like into the women's game.
Good to see you again. How are you?
My name is Mariam Mahmood and I play for West Bromwich Albion.
And talk to me about your football journey. So how did you first start getting into football?
So my dad and my uncles are quite like football crazy, and we used to like go to the park every weekend and train and stuff. So yeah, like they were really pushing me to do it. And then when I joined the academy, like I know they would come to as many games as they could.
With that, how important is it to have family that's just like constantly supportive of your journey?
It's so important, because there'll be days where like you may not feel up for it, but sometimes you just need that external support.
And your journey with the England setup, because you've had quite a special one as well. Talk me through that and what that meant to you.
I think it's like words can't describe it, especially when you was in like when you get the call up. I think I was with my dad like at a futsal like thing at school. He came to come watch me, and then like he showed me that I was in like the first like camp, and like it's speechless, like you don't even know like what to say.
Yeah. And at West Brom, we've not only got you representing the South Asians, we've got Simran over there as well. What's it been like to have a fellow South Asian play with you two?
And it's nice having someone who kind of just understands you, and it's like even the littlest things like having the same food or stuff like that.
We have like the same traits and like family like orientated as well. So yeah, we get along like really good, and it's nice seeing like both of us in the game in the same club as well, which I think is like really big.
My name's Sari. I currently play for Wolves under 16s.
And who is this next to you?
This is my dad.
With your footballing journey, what kind of got you into football in the first place, sorry?
Like watching matches with my family, because my family have been passionate about football, and then playing in the garden with my cousins. And then when I was like 7, I joined a local grassroots team.
And talk us through when you were first starting to see her play for England. What are some of your best memories of seeing her play?
When she got that call up, it was obviously we're going to get emotional. It's like the biggest stage. He called us on the stage and like, guess what? I'm starting and I'm captain. And she walks out with the team, and that was just a massive moment. And I was like happy, content with that.
And then just having the badge on your shirt, it's just absolute honour and an unreal feeling of pride and, you know, happiness. Because I feel like that's something every kid dreams of from a young age. This one was for top goal scorer. I scored, I think, 112 goals in the league. These are my 2 favourite things that I've got. So after Switzerland, at the camp, we always do a debrief and a presentation for our last thing. And in the presentation, I was presented with this pennant, and this was for captaining England.
You still come back out here? Depends sometimes.
I love the dedication here. They knocked down a whole wall to make this football pitch. So they've got all the cousins can play 2v2 tournaments, is that right?
Yeah.
Have you always been a big England fan?
Yeah, I think for me, watching the men's and the women's, like seeing the women's win the Euros has just been like so inspiring. I think not only for me, but for younger girls like me. And it's inspired loads of young girls to get into football and experience that. And it's just given us like that belief that
it can happen.
It can happen.
I've been saying that we haven't seen a senior lioness of South Asian heritage, but technically that isn't really true, because we have seen a para-lioness of South Asian heritage, and that is the amazing Lucinda Lawson, who plays for the England deaf women's futsal team.
My name is Lucinda. My sign name, within the deaf community, we are often appointed sign names. This one is mine. I am a graduate accountant trainee for Bexley Council, working there full-time. And I also play for the England deaf futsal team. When I started playing football, I never imagined I'd end up representing England and Great Britain. It's the best thing I've ever done in my life. My greatest achievement. I feel incredibly proud of myself. I'm passionate about the work I've done, and representing my country fills me with pride and love. Hearing boys have more access to football than hearing girls. When you add in having a disability, the minority becomes even smaller. As a deaf person, I still struggle in 11-a-side clubs. I'm often the only deaf person on the team. There aren't as many players as there used to be. When I was 17, I played for Fulham Deaf Ladies Football Club. We had around 20 players like myself. It was easy to play alongside others with the same experience. Now that team no longer exists, we rely on 5-a-side football. I find that quite sad.
And at the moment, what do you think are those last barriers for South Asian girls to get to that next level in football?
We need one person to break through and become well known, like David Beckham.
I think speaking to Lucinda, it was a reminder of just how important intersectionality is, because if we had better representation of deaf football, then she would be that household name that she was talking about. And we wouldn't even be having some of these conversations, but we are having these conversations. And I don't know, I just feel like I'm at a point where I kind of just feel frustrated with it all, because it just feels like these girls are so amazing and everything's still moving so slowly in comparison to what they're achieving. Because I keep saying to people, why does it matter? Like, why do we need a girl of South Asian heritage playing? And my answer to that is because there are these people and we're missing out on talent. Do we not want to have the best team? Do we not want the best talent? Like, isn't that the whole point? And I just wonder, do the people at the top level believe in that and understand that in the way that we do?
Like England, do you really want to win?
Like England, do you want to win a World Cup? Because I know some girls who can get us there.
So where should we be looking for our next steps? And as a community, what do we need to keep in mind when we do get this first South Asian senior Lioness?
The FA have had lots of different plans in place. I'd love to know what the data is of actually South Asian boys in academies and girls, and how we're actually filtering those numbers up.
It's too much pressure on them.
It's too much pressure,
Yeah,
exactly.
yeah.
That's a burden and pressure, because also you're mindful of saying something that will be inspiring to other British Asian girls and, you know, women who might be watching it, saying something about the routes and channels that might help them succeed, but also being frank. It is not straightforward, it is challenging. You know, there's something that makes you feel like the whiteness of the squad is cemented. When are we ever going to see more diversity and difference? When are we going to see the FA doing more than tokenistic, you know, one-liners?
Yeah.
You know, oh, we are doing something concrete. And some of their concrete actions have been in the pipeline for more than a decade. So where is the result of your decade-long action to address this?
Obviously, if the floodgates open, right, everyone who is the first or one of the first, you're constantly waiting. And it's been a long time waiting. I think we're going to be waiting a little longer if we don't fix things as a WSL and getting more people into those pathways and playing.
And one person might help change the game, but we need to see more across the game as a whole. We can't just say one person alone will be able to change everything.
It's vital to now look at what's being done for the future. So it's time for me to speak to the FA to get their thoughts on the issues at hand. And now is the perfect time to do so, as the FA have this year launched their first 3-year South Asians in Football action plan.
I'm Dal Singh Daroch. I'm the Head of Diversity and Inclusion Strategic Programmes at the FA.
What are some of those big barriers that you've seen for South Asian kids getting through, both boys and girls?
The access to opportunity. Maybe there's been some institutional barriers in the past, for example, from a talent ID perspective, where many people will feel that they've been judged based on their ethnicity. I think some wider perceptions around reporting of discrimination, for example, has probably got in the way of people feeling like the game is for them. Our research that we did when we launched our South Asians in Football plan this year also told us that if you are female in the game, then you're probably likely to face the triple jeopardy, which is, well, you know, you're first of all from a gender point of view, secondly, potentially from a faith point of view, and thirdly, because you're South Asian, means that you'll probably have more reasons for someone to have a bias towards you, which is really sad to see. The research also told us that parents and caregivers, quite important stakeholders that we probably need to spend a bit more time with to ensure that they are giving opportunities to their youngsters.
How is the action plan looking to address, if we start with the talent ID side of things?
Delivering courses to people from South Asian backgrounds in order to learn and attain the talent ID courses. So even now we've committed in the plan to give 25 to 30 spaces a year. We're already way ahead of that. We've already done 40 this year so far. We've got another 100 or so in the pipeline for this year. But the reason we do that is to make sure that there is a whole scale of people that understand those communities that are going out and representing the clubs and finding talent. So that's one way. The other thing we're probably going to do, which we've also committed to in the plan, is Talent ID Level 3, which really takes you into the upper echelons of the game where you represent, professional clubs, is also giving secondment or bursary programs for those people that are eligible for Level 3 Talent ID qualification. And again, we will cover that because we've realised that there is a cost barrier sometimes, and a timing thing and getting a role in the club, etc. So we're just trying to upskill as many people as we can in the Talent ID space.
So I'm Aman Dange. I work within the Women's Technical Division at the Football Association. So I'm a head of women's talent. So what we do in the talent is really try and provide a bridge between grassroots football and the elite end of the game.
And why do you think, we look at the Lionesses, we look at women's football, and there has been that slight disconnect in terms of diversity, especially compared to the men's team.
What we knew was the talent pathway was really successful. It was producing players who were winning European championships, who were playing on the very, very biggest stage. But what we also knew was that wasn't representative of our society. And what we'd done, or what the system had done by trying to drive standards, is the unintended consequence of that was actually it become quite an exclusive game. And we absolutely recognise that. And we work really closely with the Premier League, who are great supporters of what we do, to revamp our talent system, to establish emerging talent centres, which was all about trying to create more localised talent centres for talented girls, so that girls did not have to travel, 2 hours in a car to the suburbs of the city to access that opportunity. So what we did 3 years ago was we established in excess of 70 emerging talent centres. The ambition that a girl would never travel more than, an hour to their local talent centre. We've been able to really drive that down to an average of 32 minutes for any girl. That system will be free of charge for girls from next season.
And do you think we've missed out on key talent because of these difficulties in the past, even just in the women's game as a whole?
Probably. Honestly, we probably have. But that's our drive to make sure that that's not the case.
I think some of the strategy is really interesting. I think particularly the emerging talent pathways and the centres that have been created, because those are some really key factors in terms of finding diverse talent. Right now, it's hard to say if they're doing enough. I would say no, but that's because we're not seeing the output yet. But in 3 years after this action plan, if we started to see, it come into fruition and everything that they set as targeted goals, if we see that come to life, then yeah, they are doing enough. But in all honesty, until we see it happen on the pitch and elsewhere in society, in football, then no one's doing enough. And that includes us, that includes everyone involved in football. Until we're seeing the output, then how can any of us say we're doing enough? Because we're not seeing it come into fruition. As we continue to demand change for the future, when we consider all the barriers that South Asian women and their families had to go through, it's only right that we honour these trailblazing players. And flowers, they're not enough. As Aman Dange says, give them their laddus.
They've done things that no other brown girl has done. That has to be recognised. Against all odds, they've done it. The game is not really geared for them in many ways. It's not always accommodated them, whether you're from a Sikh background, a Hindu background, a Muslim background. So the girls that have actually shattered that glass ceiling, the girls that have actually gone out on the pitch and done it and made it happen, they should be marvelled at. They should be celebrated. They should absolutely be recognised.
To be honest, the amount of hurdles that girl would have gone over to get there, you can't imagine unless you're actually in her shoes.
I think for me, just seeing them out there more, it doesn't matter what league they're in, just seeing them in National League, Championship, you know, even in the lower leagues. I think just seeing them out, enjoying themselves.
I hope that I can be a role model to all these like kids and, you know, show their families and stuff that like it's possible to get to pursue a career in it. There can be a lot of cultural stereotypes that, you know, because you're a Muslim girl, like you can't play sport, and that's obviously not true. They can both go like hand in hand next to each other. So I know, for example, I just did like Ramadan, and I still trained whilst I was fasting. But when I was younger, I kind of thought like if I was fasting, I can't play as well. But that's not true. With the right support system, like you can do both.
Like my dad would be after work coming back, taking to training pretty much every night till whatever time, and then on the weekends up and down the country, even to Wales we'd have games and he'd be going like on a Sunday morning, Saturday morning. Only as I've ever gotten older, I was like, okay, fair. Like you put in work, you put in work for that. But I think as a kid you'd kind of maybe take it for granted a little bit. But I think now that I look back, I think I'm so grateful for their support, because there is no way that I'd be able to like carry on, continue playing football if they didn't like back me back in the day.
I think anyone who's got a child that plays a sport and is doing well in it will be able to relate. But yeah, it doesn't feel like work. We really enjoy doing it.
Mom, ਤੁਸੀਂ ਕਹਿ ਸਕਦੇ ਹੋ ਕਿੰਨੀ proud ਹੈ Fakira? I'm very proud. Yeah, I'm very proud.
And Sari, what would you say your goal is in terms of your football career? What are you trying to achieve?
I want to be playing like football professionally for a team in the WSL, and hopefully one day be a Lioness and represent England women's maybe in a World Cup.
It's been heavy. I think two barriers that have really stood out to me is one, just all that missed generation of talent that we failed. And as a result, our talent pool is so much smaller and less diverse to choose from. And that's going to take a while to make up for. And secondly, now that we are seeing increased participation in football, do we have the talent ID structures in place? Like, are we truly addressing unconscious bias? Are we allowing South Asian girls to get to that elite level of football? And also just what would football look like if we did truly give everyone a fair chance? Because I think it would look very different. I've also learned that it's tough to be the first. There's this unseen burden that you have to carry. It's almost like you have to take all these bullets for other people, and then you don't even necessarily get to reap the benefits of what you've sown. But the people that are reaping the benefits are this new generation, and it's beautiful to see because they don't have to worry about survival as much. They can be themselves a bit more, and for them, football's a viable career option. We never had that, and I hope that serves as some comfort for the women that have come before, because like, look what you've created, look what you fought hard for, and now it's real. So I would say to young South Asian girls who want to get involved in football, do it. Yes, it might be difficult. Yes, you might have to knock down some doors that you shouldn't have to. But man, has there been a long line of incredible South Asian women who have been knocking down those doors to make your door that little bit lighter to knock down. And for that, they all more than deserve their laddus.
Cheers to you. Thank you.